All right. Well, I'm a firm believer of getting started on time, so let's kick off. Hello, and everybody. Thank you for joining us today at the Lano Exchanges 2022. We have a great panel today and are eager to jump in. I'm Phil Rahm, your moderator. I'm from Elite HR, and I'm the founder and principal consultant. And we are a boutique HR consultancy. Just some housekeeping today. If you have a question, please submit them via the questions option on the control panel. We will have two polls, and we hope that everybody participates in those polls. And if you have any questions and technical support, please email gotowebinar@lano.io. And with that, I'd like to take a brief minute or two and have all the panelists introduce themselves. We had a really great conversation in the green room earlier today, so we're excited about where we're going to head. We have some very, very big advocates of this type of work arrangement. So without diving into the politics, when you do your introduction, can you also include what you are offering to help those that are affected by the humanitarian crisis in the Ukraine? And with that, we'll turn over to Sarah.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Sarah Hawley, founder and CEO of Growmotely. Growmotely is a global remote work platform that helps companies anywhere in the world find, hire, and retain talent anywhere in the world with a focus on culture matching. So think of us as a remote work marketplace for long-term permanent placements. I have been fully remote since 2014, so lots of experience and really looking forward to this discussion. In terms of the Ukraine thing, so Ukraine jobs at growmotely.com, email us directly if you are looking. All of our jobs are global and fully remote and open to anyone anywhere in the world, including if you are previously in Ukraine or displaced from Ukraine. But we are putting a concerted effort to help place people who are in need. And we've also partnered with Safety Wing, put a list of companies together who are kind of offering. So I would check that list out as well. We're on it, but there's a bunch of other great companies as well.
Fantastic. Paul?
Yeah, so Paul Arneson, so I'm the founder of Talent Crew. So we are a global recruitment agency. We focus solely or mainly on finding remote talents for your needs. We also operate as a traditional recruitment agency, but we can help you anywhere in the world, basically. So our slogan is sort of, if you need someone, we will find them no matter what or where. In terms of Ukraine, what we are doing is technically we are a recruitment agency. So if you are looking at hiring people moving out of Ukraine or leaving Ukraine for any reason now, we're very happy to assist anyone moving in or out of there, because we know that it's very difficult. I see every day more and more people coming up in my profile, checking out, looking for jobs, and I'm trying to support as best as possible. So obviously, if you are a company looking to hire people that have needed to relocate for Ukraine, get in touch with us. We will probably try to connect you with them as soon as possible.
Great. And last but not least, Urel.
Yes, thank you. Urel, founder of Lano. We started the company in 2018 with a mission to unlock global talent. So the value that we want to bring to business, or that we are bringing to businesses, is really helping companies at every stage to build, scale, and streamline a global team. And I think two elements worth mentioning here. It's about compliance on the one hand side, so really figuring out what is the most important thing to take into consideration when hiring in a specific region or country. What is the best work type? So if it's hiring people as contractors, hiring them as full-time employees without an entity, or at a certain level, once you hit critical numbers in a specific country, where it makes sense from an administrative or economical perspective to set up your own entities and streamline payroll and set it up yourself. So we are kind of supporting you here along the whole journey. And last but not least, very important to mention, once you scale a global team, payments is becoming very critical and complex and expensive. And we help companies that are moving money around the globe to make this in the most efficient and cost-effective way as possible. In terms of Ukraine, I mean, I have a very strong and emotional relationship to the country since, I mean, we've been remote first or global first, as I would like to call it, since day one, and our actually first employees were from the Ukraine. Now we have a total of 17 people in the team that are Ukrainians. Most of them were lucky to able to leave the country. Some of them are still there. So I think, I mean, in terms, if you have people in that country or from that regions, I think the most important thing that we have been doing is really connecting with them closely on a daily basis, asking how they're doing, how they're feeling. I think connecting with them is important. And an additional, I mean, element to, in addition to what Sarah and Paul were mentioning, what we've been implementing as a new tool, it's a company called Nilo Health, which is in general doing mental well-being for all employees, particularly also for remote employees, and they also do have sessions, especially now for the Ukraine crisis. So that's it for now for me.
Great. Well, thank you all. That's all great stuff, and keep up the great work in helping those that are in need. We're going to launch a poll right now and kind of see where everybody thinks some of the biggest issues are. So let's take 2 minutes. Let's do this poll, and then we'll come back and start with some questions for our panelists. Okay, if everyone can just select their answer, we're going to close the poll in a few seconds. Okay, let's take a look at the results. And no surprise, a lot of folks think it's all of the above, with payroll coming in second. But a lot of folks think that the toughest job is sort of all of it. And we're going to discuss and dive into a lot of these types of questions and issues. So let's dive on in. We have some sample questions to get the conversation flowing. We're going to dive on in, and the first question is for Paul. What recommendations would you suggest to companies looking to hire remote workers for the first time, and discuss what are some things about compliance and why it's important even for startups?
Yeah, well, thank you, Phil. So when it comes to hiring remote workers for the first time, I think it's important that you start with a little bit of a self-assessment of how you deal with people today in terms of trust. One of the biggest changes, if you've never been working with remote people, is that you won't see them every day. If you're used to having people coming to the office, and that makes you either unknowingly actually comfortable, just seeing people coming in and out of the office, coming at 9, leaving at 5, that's something that's going to change for you, because now you will have a distributed team that you won't see every day, and you have to sort of make a self-assessment to understand if you are comfortable in this kind of work environment. Obviously, it is not a big deal, but for some people that are not used to this, it might be something you need to consider to be a big change. That visual feedback is very important for a lot of people. You can sort of mitigate that a little bit with having video calls and stuff like that, but in general sense, that sort of is a time thief when you have a lot of virtual meetings all the time. So there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to this aspect of not seeing people every day. That's going to change for you. So to develop these procedures, they have to be done before you sort of take the leap to say, I'm now going to start hiring remote workers, because if you do it too late, you might have lost a really good a bunch of good people at the beginning. The second thing is, I think is also very important, is that you need to plan for how you want to compensate. If you are used to hiring from one area only, it's very easy. You can find sort of benchmark salaries. You can deal with that for the people living in your area. You sort of offer them that, and it's sort of okay, it's accepted. But if you're looking to hire someone from a different country, different region of the world, you all of a sudden have to consider that what they are expecting to get paid might be very different from what you can offer. If you are from a low-cost country looking to hire someone from a high-cost country, your budget might not match what they are expecting. So this is something you absolutely need to consider. When it comes to stuff like compliance and everything, I think a very good thing to understand is that it's easy, especially if you're a startup, if you are moving into, say, a way of keeping costs down by hiring freelancers and contractors and everything, it's it can actually happen that you get into a situation where you are breaching the law of the country where someone is living, because you're treating them as an employee and not as a contractor, for example. So you have to be very careful about how you deal with the person you're hiring. There are some countries that have very strict rules and regulations about this. I think Germany is one of them. Even if you are sending them equipment that is yours, so that sort of you buy equipment to them so they can use that, they're technically in some countries regarded as an employee and not a contractor. And all of a sudden you're breaching you're breaching the law basically in that country, and you have to pay taxes on that person locally. And then all of a sudden you're into some sort of problems that you have to solve, which is going to be just a mess. So think about that if you are a startup, because it's easy to think, okay, I'm going to save some money, I'm just going to hire a bunch of contractors, I'm going to treat them as employees, and they're going to live in low-cost countries and everything. But the moment this thing happens, you breach something, the law and regulation, well, you have basically made yourself look really bad, and you might have to let people go, and all of a sudden you have to restart your sort of thinking about this. So yeah, I think that's sort of long answer, but it was a long question. So
Sarah, you want to jump in on this as well?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd add is, and it really depends, if you have not hired or you're not operating remote, then I think things to consider as you make the transition into a remote organization is onboarding, training, and communication from a remote perspective. So like Paul suggested, doing a bit of a look inward, but of the company, and saying, like, how do our systems, when we onboard a new team member, when we're doing a training plan for a new team member, how do they translate to online? Are they already online? Which they may well be, because reality is in 2022, most of what we do is actually online anyhow. But making sure that these kind of onboarding checklists and systems and processes and the technology that you're using to get people through and set up is going to work effectively online. And the same would be said for communication methods. I think are different because you're not having all of that anecdotal chit chat around the office. We need a little more structure around everything to ensure that people get the information that they need, and that people know how to communicate the information that they need to the rest of the team.
Yeah, and can I just put a small comment on that with communication? It's very simple to think that if you know how to use an online tool to communicate, your team might not know that, right? So it's easy to say, yeah, we're going to start using Slack and Teams and whatever, and then for some people this might be completely new. So that's Sarah said, you need to prepare those onboarding. You have to sort of, they are made for your current setup. Now you're moving remotely, what would be different, right? So yeah, this is very important.
Yeah, and having that stuff kind of documented at somewhere for new people, of like, this is how we use Slack, like this is kind of our cadence and our expectations and how we operate, and that will help them get up to speed a little bit faster versus just having to observe and absorb. They also have a little bit of a head start there as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe also adding 3 comments here. So I think what we've been seeing and what we've been, for us, I think at least trying to really fine tune, and we are still fine tuning, and we always will be. I think 3 elements are important. I think, Sarah, as you mentioned, communication is key. Next to that, it's the right tools and how to use it. And the third element, especially for startups or scale ups, is alignment. Alignment on the mission, the vision, the culture. And I think these are 3 elements where it's really important to focus on from the very beginning onwards. what is the way how we want to communicate. This is like OKRs is one element for alignment, but also for communication. So you have regular monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, annual, half-annual team gatherings. What tools, how to use Slack, when to use email, when to use Zoom or Google Hangouts, whatever it is. And especially the alignment on really building a remote team, yeah, or a distributed team is so crucial to really bringing the team together on driving this mission and vision. Yeah, so I think these three elements that we have been seeing as the core pillars for me making remote work possible and thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Great start to our panel and conversation. Ariel, can you please give us your thoughts on the growth and direction of global payroll? What is next?
Yeah, what is next? I mean, obviously, the world of work is changing or has been changing dramatically. I always have the feeling through the pandemic, we've been thrown into 2030 or beyond from a mindset perspective. I think a lot of companies have realized that remote work is really working. But there are three stages, I think, that are crucial for where global payroll is going. And I think starting with the first one, tapping into a global talent pool. Yeah? So I think especially for startups that want to hire their first talents, being able to really hire the best talent, not just in their local areas or through their network, but pretty much anywhere is great. Yeah, and I think here knowing how to drive through this compliance maze of how do I, as Paul was mentioning, what is the best way to hire this person in a specific country. So I think it is crucial to really have this kind of set in place. The second part is for us, once you start to scale and you go into expansion mode, and this is pretty much for any business that is going international. Yeah, and we always like to call this also the expansion as a service use case for businesses. So let's say you are operating in a specific country and you plan now, okay, we're scaling and we want to grow into new markets. Yeah, what is the best way to launch new markets? So, I mean, you can start hiring talent there before having to set up an entity. You can test the market. You can do first preparations. You can then, once you're ready to trade, you can switch. You can set up the entity and streamline the payroll and set up the local payroll. And the third element is for which is quite important to mention also for big enterprises or multinational companies that are already operating globally. Yeah? And I think what we've been seeing a lot here is that the market is so fragmented. Yeah? And you are operating in, let it be 20 countries already. In every country, you have a different local payroll provider, you have different reports, different spreadsheets that are being shared around the company. And I think really of bringing this all together in one consolidated and centralized, streamlined way is where we see global payroll becoming much more digital and much more effective from being able to scale into new markets.
Sarah, anything to add on global payroll?
No, I mean, I really think that Ariel covered most of it.
Paul, anything on your end?
Yeah, I think that obviously one of the biggest things that a lot of clients come to us and say when they come with their sort of compensation plan or what they want to compensate, I don't think they really have done their due diligence or doing any research. Like, I think there's a need now for someone who can come and provide them that sort of platform where they can figure out how to plan for global growth, because today they don't really know. So they are still stuck in sort of their local mindset when they are thinking about how they want to build their team for global expansion, and they fail quite often of setting the right sort of payroll for the people that they're looking for outside. So there's like different models here that companies need to sort of consider. Is either do we pay everybody the same, or do we then, you know, have like a different salaries depending on location and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but I think that to have something that is centralized where you can have one platform that you can go to and can give you all those solutions, that will be something that I really think is going to come more and more now, because now it's a little bit fragmented. You have, and a lot of companies like us as a recruitment company has to do a lot of that research on behalf of clients, you know, which is not what they actually are paying for. you know. So in that sense, that if there was someone who could take that sort of job, that would help us, it will help them as well, the clients. Yeah.
Yeah, I will just add, I mean, I do think partnering with a company to help makes sense, because the other aspect of it is it's changing all the time. Like right now, we don't actually have global employment laws. We're kind of using current nation-based employment laws to try to figure out how a company in South Africa hires 3 people in 3 different countries. So that's all going to change and evolve, and so partnering with and having access to companies like all of ours really, and anyone else in this space, whether it's just following the content or actually working with them, I just think is really important, because I mean, I'm sure you guys would agree, this is work that we're doing all the time. Some of us are even putting together white papers and policy statements and advising governments on how to move forward. So it's a rapidly change. I mean, not a lot of changes have happened yet, but it's going to happen, obviously, from a policy perspective. I mean,
I will throw this out there, and I'm surprised none of you mentioned this. What do you think the role of cryptocurrency will be as we start to talk about, you know, uniform rules and the start of crypto states?
that's where I see the future. I think we're going to skip all this nation-based stuff, government stuff. I think we're seeing employment become uncoupled from nation state and uncoupled from government regulation. That's the future that excites me.
I mean, it really depends on the work type. I mean, especially for contractors, it is technically possible already. Yeah, but for full-time employees, there's still a way to go. Let's put it this way. Yeah, and it's really going to be interesting to see how governments will really allow cryptos to be used for managing payroll, or for actively paying payroll. So I mean, crypto has a very interesting element. I'm a little bit cautious on the future here of crypto payments for full-time employees still, but I think what is more interesting to see is the whole blockchain technology behind it, which you can use for sending payroll data. Yeah, I think this. I mean, that's a different conversation we could have here, but at least within the next 10 years, I personally don't see a lot of governments and countries opening up for crypto payments of salaries.
Do you ever think about, like, because in the current world we have this, like, independent contractors, employees, full-time, like we have all these definitions. It's quite complex, right? And I think of this from the small business mindset, because that's our target market. Like, it's quite ridiculous how complicated it is for a very small, like 5-person company or whatever, even if you, even just locally, like, let alone trying to deal with the global sector. But do you guys ever think, like, would we get to a place where we simplify all that? Like, really, what is the difference between an employee and like, there's all these like legal differences, but why do we need all of that complexity? Can we not just come together as a group of people working on this thing? Like, that's what that excites me.
Paul, you wanted to jump in?
No, I was just gonna say that I know, like, if you're talking about the crypto, sort of the decentralized economy, I was just gonna mention there are developments they're happening with companies now creating sort of, I think it's called brain trust or something, like decentralized talent networks and stuff like that. Which so there are development going on there. So but I agree with what Sarah is saying. Now I think that, like, the goal obviously is that it shouldn't be hard for someone to find a way to help other companies and then to find work. And we are sort of still dealing with the mentality that's very old about contracts and employment, and the world is moving forward, right? So the way that the decentralized economy with the crypto is sort of changing into Web 3.0, right? Where when someone can work on your projects, they are being paid, everything is fine. We shouldn't worry about that in the future, and I think it's going to change, but that's not on us, that's governments, you know, that has to deal with that. We could set up our own little thing, but I don't think it's gonna drive traction.
I mean, maybe just one final comment. I think where you could enable something for businesses at least is moving money around the globe. Yeah, let's say you are a business in the US and you shift cryptos from one part to the other part. I think you still would need to convert it into the local currencies, but I think moving money around is possible, but really in the end, paying out employees, there's still a way to go.
All right. Well, the intersection between government and employment will continue to be a shifting and interesting one. Let's put a pen in this, and you could have a whole nother panel just on this topic alone. So let's go and do our second poll. I'm going to launch the poll and give everybody a minute or two, and then we'll come back and talk about the results. Okay, for those that have not voted and want to vote, please get your votes in. We're going to close the poll in a few more seconds. Okay, well, if you look at these results, even after trying to prime the pump, nobody thinks crypto, or 6% of the people think crypto is going to be the next big challenge. And we had behind the scenes, before we came on board, a conversation on if hybrid's going to work. But it looks like the vast majority of you are more concerned about benefit strategy. So that's an interesting conversation, and that feeds right into the question for you, Sarah. What's important with working with global teams? How do you successfully manage distributed teams, manage multiple time zones, different cultures, payroll, benefit needs? What are your tips for success in this area?
Well, I do want to shed some light on something just before we move forward. We recently surveyed all of our remote professionals, and 90% of them said they would like to receive part of their pay in cryptocurrency either now or know that they have the option to it. So it's not necessarily a challenge, because maybe it's not actually that complicated, but I do think it's important to be aware when you're dealing with a global team, there are lots of countries and lots of people in different parts of the world that are like ready, willing, able, already dealing in cryptocurrency at levels that are different from certainly the United States or Australia, where I'm originally from. So I just wanted to point that out because I saw the results of the poll and I thought that would be interesting. And then I saw the biggest area was benefits, and is that kind of going to circle back to your question there, Philip, if I talk about benefits a little bit?
Absolutely. Let's talk about how do you manage benefits with distributed teams and have a strategy for that, and how do you deal with different cultures and different, again, the intersection between government and employment.
So the way that I think about benefits is, even in, let's say I was back in Melbourne, Australia, where I started my first company and I had an office and I hired a bunch of people in Melbourne. And then I created what were our kind of benefits and perks, partly related to our company, partly related to maybe what legally we have to provide. The reality is not 100% of my team, even in that scenario, are going to value the things that I'm putting together. Therefore, the dollars and time and energy that as a company I'm spending on it, is not necessarily completely valued. Like, it's quite difficult, even in that context, to create a benefits package or perks package that everybody loves. So then we add in the element of having a global team where you have people in Australia and America and 20 different other countries, and we start to see some real challenges from a business perspective of how to figure out, and this is not even the legally what we need to provide, but like also what we would like to provide. For example, if you were saying, okay, we're going to give everyone healthcare, an Australian wouldn't really value that because their healthcare is kind of free or paid for in taxes, and a lot of countries in Europe are the same, and Canada. Whereas in the US, like that is the #1 thing people are looking for, because healthcare is very, very expensive here. So creating benefits and perks that are relevant and valued by everyone in the team gets even more complicated when you're dealing with people in different parts of the world. What we've done at Growmotely is build a benefits marketplace where all of the professionals who work on our platform choose their own benefits. So they have a certain portion of their salary, 15% of their monthly fee gets added into their benefits bank account, so to speak, and then they choose how they want to build their own benefits. I think this, and I know there are other companies working on just that, like that's what they do, is they are a benefits provider. And I think this is really where we're going to see the future, where we're empowering the individual to choose and create their own benefits. Obviously, with some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, like I see this future where employment is actually becoming uncoupled from the government telling us what we have to do at every level of, at every step of the process, every level of the way. And we're having more empowered citizens, more empowered individuals who are making choices for them, being more informed and taking more ownership of the decisions they're making. So that's kind of the future I see and what we've built through Growmotely. I think the other, we use an independent contractor model at Growmotely, so I think there is another factor that needs to be considered, which Aurel would be better to speak to, and probably Paul as well, where if you are choosing to have a full-time employee, you do have to comply with not just the benefits that you would like to give as a company, but like what that local government says has to be provided. So that's a different aspect.
Yeah, maybe just putting some comments on what you were just saying. I think especially challenges that we, I mean, always are seeing from time to time with employer of record solutions, so hiring without an entity, is the permanent establishment risk of, for instance, one benefit that that we are always seeing is, okay, hey, is it possible for my employee to work from a co-working space? Yeah, and technically, this could be at risk. Yeah, I mean, some players ignore this. Yeah, but there are some troubles that that would come along the line. Yeah, with this. So, I mean, and similar like you guys, Sarah, at Growmotely are doing it. We're building a similar network. Yeah, of additional benefits tools. Yeah, I mean, hardware setup just being something very simple. Let's say you are starting your first remote job. Okay, maybe you need a proper chair, yeah, or you need a laptop. Yeah, and I think there are, as we were mentioning, there are companies out there that are just offering these kind of services for hardware equipment and office equipment for working from home. Yeah, I think, and on top of this, one element that I was mentioning before is which I think is great, is for remote employees or for distributed teams, is the mental health topic. Yeah, and I think here really giving your team members that are, I mean, working from home can be tough for some at certain points, and I think the mental health is something very important that we see, at least being quite an important element in terms of benefits.
Yeah, now I want to just emphasize on that as well. I think that one of the perks that a lot of companies are sort of could be thinking about is actually giving people an opportunity or access to enjoy a social life, because a lot of people have traditionally, especially in my culture where I'm from in Norway, where social life was work, and it's always been that way. So sort of what would happen outside of work was very difficult. So people sort of, now when everybody's going home, like to work from home, especially during the pandemic, it's like, where do we go now to socialize? And then if you hire someone to work from home, they might be hermits all of a sudden. They only work from home. They go to bed, they wake up, they work, and they sort of lack the social life. So to sort of help them understand that in your community or in your city, there are probably a lot of things happening. And I think eventually there will be more and more of these popping up. I see now where I'm living now, there's more and more like a members club coming for independent contractors, freelancers, solo entrepreneurs, and everything. It's popping up everywhere around the biggest cities now around Europe. And I think that's just, you know, as an example of something that has been missing for people that now just more and more are moving into working remotely. I think also another thing I want to just mention about this with benefits, which is like very, very difficult, is the fact that, as you said, Sarah, not every person would like to have the same type of benefits. And this is also very, very cultural dependent. So if you're as a company might say, oh yeah, we're gonna provide you a gym membership. But for some people might not find that valuable. They might want to have a food voucher, for example, or they want to have something that is really little bit weird when it comes to remote work, like a transportation card or something. But you know, for some people that's a value because they can use that to see their friends and travel around the city when they're not working. And so I think that when you're hiring remotely, and we see that quite a lot with clients, we ask them, so this is your compensation in terms of money. What's the benefits you're offering to that person? It's remote, and they don't really know, right? Because they haven't thought about benefits for someone in a remote setting because they can't see them. They don't know what to give them. And again, back to what we talked about earlier about a client or someone hired remotely having a place to go to get that information. You know, what should I consider if I'm going to hire someone from, you know, Nigeria or Pakistan or Australia? You know, they have to understand this because they might have an expectation of getting these sort of perks, not the healthcare and everything, but the perks, you know, that if I were to work for company in my city, I will get those perks. But if I work for you, even though you're in another part of the world, I'm not going to get those benefits. So why would I choose you, right? So these things is difficult for companies to really know. They have no idea because they're not present in that market they're hiring from. That's where our job is to come in to help them navigate those worlds and also to use, you know, someone like you, the other guys in the panel here, to help provide that information. So yeah, this is a very thing. And I think just one last thing is that for independent contractors, a thing that we have found actually, which has been very helpful, is to try to help them define when they can go on holiday, if they can go on holiday. Because if they're freelancing, you really don't think you take holiday, right? So they don't think about days off. But if you hire someone as an independent contractor, they might have those questions because a lot of people now are hiring on project base, and then they are used to working full time because companies go, hey, I'm going to hire someone from there. They set up like a freelance independent company for the first time, and then they start working. They have no idea how to deal with that with the client, and the client might not even know how to deal with that, right? So again, is holiday something that is a benefit for a contractor or an employee? There's a lot of pitfalls you can fall into here. So yeah, this is a huge topic as well.
Okay, so I want to throw out a question to the whole entire panel, and we have a panel here that's located in a lot of different locations, and some of them are living in areas in which they're not originally from. So how do you overcome some of the cultural differences that you see, and how do you advise clients or people within your own organizations? How do you overcome some of those cultural differences and build either team unity or team spirit? And keep culture moving in your organizations. And I throw that out there to the panel, and whoever wants to jump in first, go ahead.
I have lots to say, but yeah.
Sarah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think the most important thing for companies to do is understand what their culture is and then be able to communicate that effectively, both during, you know, the advertising of a job, on the website always, and then throughout the interview and onboarding process, and then really always and forever. So I see kind of like the values essentially form a lot of what the culture is. Like that's how we show up for each other. We have the vision of where we're going. We have the why of why we exist, and we would want to be looking for people who are excited by that vision and who want to show up in the world for this kind of reason. But the values are really like how we show up every day for each other. And at Growmotely, for example, I mean, we have them on our website. We definitely, all companies on Growmotely have to put their values, their vision, and their purpose so that candidates can actually see this about a company. But we also revisit our values every all company meeting, and we share stories of where any of us or anyone in our sphere, like customers or professionals who are working on the platform, have lived our values. So we're giving these real examples of where someone's really embodied one of our values, so that we're constantly kind of showing and reminding ourselves of like what it means to show up in this way. What I think about when I think about culture is kind of like a 3 Venn diagram, like something like this. if you guys know what I'm saying. Sorry for my terrible quick PowerPoint. But every individual, we have like how we were raised, our family of origin and early life, and the things that were kind of culturally accepted in our home, and potentially bleeding out a little bit to like school and very small social circle. Then we have the culture of the country that we were raised in. Usually there's a lot of, cultural, anyone who's traveled, I'm sure anyone in 2022 understands that countries have different cultural aspects. And then we have the culture of this company that we're working on. So we're really looking at all three. And I think bringing awareness to that and having open conversations often about this might have been like the culture of how you were raised, and this might be the culture in your country, and this is the culture in our company. So like, where are they different and where are they similar? And nothing's right or wrong, good or bad, but understanding each other. Really simple things like some countries tend to be more direct in the way that they speak. I think Germany would be one, South Africa, actually. Australians also are pretty direct. And then in America, there's a lot of pleasantries that don't always exist in other countries. A lot of, how are you? How was your day? All this rapport building that goes at the top of every email when you're just maybe following up on something. And then other parts of the world, there's more hierarchy and structure. So these are like communication norms, as an example, to get a little more granular, that are really good to talk about within the team of like, how do we talk with each other? How does our communication flow work? At Growmotely, we use a lot of like sis, bro, babe, fam, tribe. Like we use a lot of like very informal pleasantries toward each other. And we talk about that with new team members of like, this is very normal for us here, even though it might not be normal in the last job you had, which might have been in your country where you might have had to address people who were above you as sir or ma'am or whatever it might be. So really having conversations around that. Something that I've found as well as a leader that's really important when working with a global team where you've got these different cultural aspects, when there might be like a conflict between two team members, a misunderstanding, some friction happening, having a look at that, at communication styles, and seeing if that might be the cause of it. I remember years ago, to use the German example, one of my COO was from Germany, and she was having a challenge with someone who was from the Philippines. And what we figured out was the person in the Philippines was perceiving the communication from the person who happened to be from Germany as like aggressive, and she didn't like me, and it was unhappy with me because our COO would just be like, where's the thing, where's the report, chasing this up, because she's just busy and rushing and she doesn't have time. And when we were able to explain like, this is not actually rude, this was just a direct communication, but also allowing that person to see, oh, like if I just wrote, hey, how are you? Do you have the report? Like it might be received a little bit better. And so helping people understand that the way they might be receiving and perceiving communication is not necessarily accurate, but really coming to, and I've watched time and time again, the company culture. Like I said, I've been remote since 2014. I've watched the communication of everyone in the team who are from all these different backgrounds come over time into this crescendo harmony of our company's communication. And I know that that's a different style from everywhere else they might have worked in their country and how they might speak with people locally, but they've learned like, oh, this is how we show up at Growmotely. This is how we do things, or whatever company it is. So yeah, I think that's the way that I look at it, kind of bringing these pieces together and really understanding who the company is and how we show up.
Paul, you want to jump in? I mean, you're from Norway, living in Italy. Like, you probably have a good perspective on this as well. So let's talk about your company and what you see.
Yeah, so I've been living basically outside of where I grew up for like 12 years now, and sort of haven't really been back there ever since for like a shorter period of time. But like, I think this is very me, because I've been traveling and living everywhere. So I love being around different cultures and seeing different people, and I want to understand different culture, and I'm not afraid of going into a new culture. It's like, for me, it's the globe is one big place and everybody is the same. Everybody has their own sort of quirks and weirdos anyways. But usually it's like something we do, like that's the thing that I never really think about this. Like it just comes naturally. So if someone is from a different culture than me, what I would need to know is I would usually ask them, what's important for you? Like, because I might not know that, and I don't want to assume that I know better than someone who's from a different culture. Like, for example, now we have 2 people who are Muslim, so Ramadan is starting next week, right? So like, and I had to ask them, how important is that for you while you're working with us? Because I don't know if this is something that is you take it very seriously, or you're going to be able to work full or whatever. So it's all about me with my experience of traveling and living many countries. It's just I have an appreciation that different cultures see things differently and they work differently. So I think that the challenge for someone who's never done that is just, you have to try to put yourself in their shoes and try to understand where they're coming from, which is very difficult if you never lived abroad or traveled a lot. If you travel for holidays, it's not the same. You sort of have to travel and try to live there for a while to just try to sort of soak up their culture and then try to apply that to your own business. That's what I've been doing basically. So I don't have a formula. I haven't written it down. It's just part of me personally, my nature. But I don't try to sort of enforce it on any of the others either. I just want to try to show it with the way that I'm managing, that we are open to everyone and we want to be all inclusive. And that's basically why we're doing it. Yeah. So I think.
All right. So team spirit at Lano, how do you maintain that and manage different cultures?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you guys also don't know, but I've been living most of my life abroad as well. So I mean, I'm German, as you can hear.
There's a theme here, I think, amongst leaders of global remote companies.
But I mean, I lived in Luxembourg, I lived in Stockholm, I lived in the UK, spent quite some time in China. So I've been really, yeah, living in different regions. I mean, within Europe, but also outside of Europe. And the question is funny because we just had a company offsite just last week, and we were revisiting our values. So and I think just, I mean, Sarah, you mentioned so many valuable things, but I think what is for us, I mean, and saying this as a German, I think speaking straight without being rude, yeah, I think is a good is a good way to get there. Yeah, but I think for us, what is important, maybe just two elements. It's being globally minded, so inclusive, from recruiting our team to building our products from all over the world. And a second topic that is based on trust is unconditional collaboration. Yeah, I think this is across departments, across countries, across cultures, across anything. I think this is just something that I wanted to add maybe here. And the rest has been already said.
I feel that about your company as well, the unconditional collaboration. I think that's really beautiful. And I just wanted to reaffirm that, like, I feel that energy of your brand as well. And that's, for companies listening out there, like, that really is the essence of the values, is they should be who you are, not who you would like to be. And I think to your point of the straight, how did you call it? The straight communication?
Straight without being rude.
Yeah. And like, there's nothing wrong with, and in fact, it's natural that the values will come from, largely from the founder to some degree, and probably, the country where the founder's from. Like, there's going to be some of that influence, and that's not a bad thing at all. There's no right or wrong with this stuff. It kind of makes sense that would be one of Lano's values. And really all it's about for me is, how do we communicate this stuff really clearly? For us, like, transparency and candor is one of our values. So it's about being really open and really transparent. And that comes largely from me. It's how I like to operate. And so it's important that people understand that and understand why it's important and how to do it and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the end, it's the culture that is building our company, yeah, and will build our company, yeah, and which will have a critical effect on our success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I also just want to say that's what you said. What you said is, Sarah, that's sort of your. I think it's hard for me to write down the values for my company because it's mine. Because I want everybody to be part of the culture, right? So I am not everyone, but I have sort of my, frame set of how I want it to be, and I have my. But I think that the values that you get from your childhood when you grow up in your own culture, will affect the way you are managing a company. It doesn't go away, you know, so it's very difficult, but you should always try to sort of take one step above everyone and look down and say, okay, how can we together work as a team and find a culture and a value that's working for everyone, instead of me trying to impose my values on everyone. I'm not saying no one is doing that, but I think a lot of companies are, in essence, setting the value that everybody should follow and then force them to follow them. And it's really something that it just has to come natural. I think for us that have been living remotely and working remotely, it sort of falls natural to take care of culture in a natural way. You know, it just comes with the work we're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's like, you know, when you first start the company, it's just you, and then, or you and your co-founders, and then you add some more people. And naturally at the very start, it's going to be more reflective of you because it is just you working with yourself. And then you end up with more people, and then it's evolving. I think it's really important to continue to revisit this stuff and say, like, is this value still true of who we are, or has it evolved a little bit? And it's okay. It's a work in progress always to be most true to who we are in this moment. I totally agree with that. It's a really good point.
Okay, well, you know, I don't want to end the discussion on this, but we do want to encourage folks to, you know, send over any questions. You could use the questions button in the control panel or send them out through the chat. I think, you know, if we could summarize some of our conversations, is those that are on the forefront of this remote global movement are those that have actually been living in a lot of different countries, which is fantastic. And I would say, summarizing some of your comments, is culture, values, mission are critical to building trust, and that is the essence of success. You know, we're going to run out of time if we don't see any questions coming in a few seconds. I want to give the panelists an opportunity to sort of say any final words, and we'll start with Sarah this time.
Cool. I just want to say thanks for being here. It's been really great conversation. I feel really excited about where the world's headed. I did have a light bulb moment actually in this conversation just now, thinking about who we all are and the fact that we all have spent the majority of our adult lives living in different parts of the world. And it is actually, like I said, a light bulb moment, but it's actually no surprise that people like us are at the forefront of bringing to business and to business of all sizes. I think there's such a huge opportunity for diversity and inclusion at a global scale. And like, this might sound wild and idealistic, but I think this is our chance at world peace, really. Like, when we are working with and interacting with people from all over the planet on a daily basis, no longer do I want to put on, you know, go to war. Like, I mean, it's happening right now, and we're not even going to talk about that, but like, I think if we fast forward 10, 20 years where we're all working like this and interacting like this, it becomes a lot harder for us to see the idea of other, which has been sold to us most of our lives. Like, this is our country, this is the best place on earth, we're all lucky to be here, everywhere else is out there. It's breaking down these borders and barriers and these unconscious biases at rates that we've never seen before, which is what always attracted me to travel and to live and experience other parts of the world. But now we're able to bring that to our day-to-day lives in every business, everywhere, which is just incredible.
Okay, Paul.
Well, yeah, so obviously, thank you very much for having me, and I really enjoyed this conversation. And I think that, yeah, to just continue what Sarah is saying, I think that one of the things that when I was younger, man, like 10, 12 years ago, when I was moving abroad and I was like struggling to find job where I was living, because I was looking for employment, but of course, because I wasn't from there, remote work wasn't really a big thing. It's just, I'm so amazed where we are now. Like, that's what I love, but what I'm doing, because I can actually now, through my resources and the people in my company, we can help talents anywhere find opportunities anywhere, right? And it's so amazing. And I wish that, maybe now I don't wish it because I wouldn't be here maybe, but you know, back in the days, if someone could be helping me find a job, it would just make the world so much better. And I think we are, like you say, Sarah, I think if everybody can think like this and just like make sure that we take care of everyone, it's like one big round ball spinning through the air we're living on, right? So why can't we just work together? And that's what we are trying to do with sort of, maybe we should need to rephrase remote work to something global. I don't know, like it's just bigger than what it can be, bigger than what it is at the moment. I think we are, yeah, it's a positive force for what we're doing, definitely. So yeah, thank you again very much.
And let's make a big thank you to Lano for putting this together. And Ariel, the last words will be yours.
Yeah, I mean, big thank you. I mean, I really enjoyed the last hour. So I mean, really rewarding listening to, and also learned a lot of very interesting stuff from all of you. I think just one last comment. What I also think is so amazing about this shift now, and being really active, playing an active role in this, is that there are so many companies now being established that couldn't even exist 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah, so I think there's so many opportunities from a, let's say, business perspective or from an individual perspective that are we're just at the beginning. Yeah, so it's really cool. So thank you very much.
Well, with that, we'll close the webinar and just say, wow. I mean, we could talk about this for many more hours, many more days, and as you can tell, we're all pretty passionate folks on this. So thank you all for coming to the panel and participating today. And if any of you in the audience have any additional questions or want to meet any of the panelists, please contact Raquel at gotowebinar@lano.io. And with that, we'll close the webinar on time, and hope everybody has a great rest of the day or evening, depending upon where you are in the world. Thank you all for participating today. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you.